Trump spent the year saying America needed faster AI and fewer restraints. But the strongest AI power story moving through Washington right now says the frontier labs are getting too risky to trust on speed alone. That is the real tension behind today's story. NIST says the Center for AI Standards and Innovation, or CAISI, signed new agreements with xAI, Google DeepMind, and Microsoft around frontier AI national security testing. Reuters adds the practical detail. CAISI can get early access to major new model releases so it can evaluate dangerous capabilities before those systems spread further. And Axios frames the political meaning pretty clearly. Trump's White House still talks like acceleration is the goal, but the frontier models are forcing more pre-deployment testing back into the picture. On the surface, this looks technical. A standards body, a testing lane, some big labs, a careful press release. But underneath that, Washington is admitting something much bigger. The AI race is no longer just about who ships first, who raises more money, or who gets the smartest chatbot into consumers' hands. It is increasingly about who gets trusted near state power, cyber risk, government systems, and public infrastructure. And once a technology gets close to state power, the language changes. That is why this matters. Trump's opening posture on AI was easy to understand. Move faster. Remove drag. Beat rivals. On January 23, 2025, he signed an executive order called Removing Barriers to American Leadership in Artificial Intelligence. Then the White House backed agency guidance and procurement changes designed to make federal AI use move faster, not slower. So if the political brand is still pro-speed, why are official testing agreements getting deeper? Because frontier capability growth is starting to scare even the people who want acceleration. The public conversation still gets stuck on chatbot mistakes, weird images, or homework cheating. That is not the deepest government concern anymore. The harder question is whether the strongest models can materially assist cyber operations, handle sensitive workflows badly, or slip into trusted systems before anyone has done serious evaluation under realistic conditions. That is where CAISI enters the story. If a federal testing body gets earlier access to important models, the government is no longer acting like a pure spectator that studies the mess after release. It is trying to move upstream, closer to the point where capability and risk are judged before the model spreads more widely. That is not a cosmetic shift. That is a power shift. And the company names matter here. Elon Musk's xAI, Google DeepMind, Microsoft. Those are not random participants. They are three of the most important names in model scale, compute, deployment, and political influence. When those firms move deeper into a federal testing lane, Washington is signaling that the frontier is no longer a casual software category. It is part of a national security and public trust conversation now. There is another reason this shift is getting harder to ignore. The frontier labs themselves keep showing why just move fast is no longer a complete policy. Anthropic's recent Mythos preview is a good example of the mood change. The exact brand name matters less than what it represents. More capable systems, more cyber relevance, and a louder warning that release decisions cannot be treated like ordinary product launches forever. That does not mean the government suddenly became anti-AI. It means the capability curve is outrunning the old talking points. And this is where the story gets really interesting for ordinary people, not just policy insiders. Because the standards built in this testing layer do not stay in one room. They spill outward. They influence which firms become normal suppliers to public agencies. They shape procurement expectations. They shape what counts as acceptable documentation, logging, red teaming, and cyber review. They can affect contractor tools, public sector software, enterprise products, and eventually consumer systems that inherit the same safety culture or the same blind spots. So even if you never open one of these frontier models directly, you still live downstream from the rules and relationships forming here. That can show up in privacy expectations, workplace tooling, public system spending, vendor concentration, and trust in automation that gets sold as neutral before people really understand who built the guardrails. And there is a market power angle hiding inside all of this. Safety sounds neutral, and often it is necessary. But safety can also become a moat. If only a handful of giant firms have the lawyers, compute, access, and government relationships needed to move through advanced testing channels smoothly, then testing does not only reduce risk, it can also reinforce concentration. In other words, the likely outcome is not simply more safety. It could be more safety and more power for the firms already closest to the center. That is why Elon Musk matters here in a deeper way than clickbait. Musk is one of the loudest public voices for speed, scale, and anti-friction politics. If even xAI is being folded deeper into federal testing relationships, that tells you the capability picture is starting to overwhelm the acceleration-only message. The technology is getting too consequential for ideology alone to manage. So what should we watch next? First, watch whether these agreements stay narrow or expand into a broader release testing standard for frontier developers. Second, watch what the government says it is actually measuring. If the testing remains vague, then a lot of this is theater. If Washington starts naming concrete dangerous capabilities, cyber thresholds, or meaningful release conditions, then the shift is more real. Third, watch Congress. If lawmakers stay behind again, then the executive branch and a small group of firms will keep setting the practical rules first and the legislative rules later. And fourth, watch the language gap. If the White House keeps talking like pure acceleration is still the whole plan while quietly building more gates around frontier models, that gap will tell us where US AI policy is actually headed. The core lesson from this story is simple. Trump still wants faster AI. The biggest labs still want scale, influence, and market advantage. But the official testing system just got more serious, and that means Washington is no longer fully comfortable trusting frontier AI on speed alone. Subscribe for clear daily explainers without the hype. And in the comments, tell me which part you want tracked next. Elon Musk and XAI, the actual testing standards, or the White House politics behind the shift.